One
Where are
thing
you located?
I am in Waco, Texas.
Hmm.
It is it's that weird time of year where summer became winter and fall never really went anywhere, or like we never
Mm-hmm.
really got a fall. So
Yeah.
it was unfortunate, but
Yeah, it kind of feels like
it
fall and spring seasons of the past, which is weird.
yeah,
Seems to kind of jump.
we legitimately went from 100 degrees to let's see, I think it jumped down into like the mid climate. Oh, yeah. Alrighty. Well, if you're ready to go, I will do the intro and we can jump into it.
Great. Yeah, all set.
Cool. All right. Welcome, everybody, to another live and amplified livecast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we are back at it again after a crazy week day yesterday. I went 24 hours on stream. We did a nice little podcast marathon to raise money for pancreatic cancer research and awareness for the PanCan organization. So that was a lot of fun, and I want to thank everybody for joining us on that adventure. It was quite the journey around the world with a bunch of different musicians. And yes, I am crazy enough to book another podcast right after that. The next day, we just got to keep it going. But we have Ruby, my dear, joining us. How's it going?
It's going well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know. First off, I want to apologize. I know we originally talked about doing this last Friday, but because I'm only human and I make mistakes, I apologize. And luckily, we were able to
All
get you
good.
rebooked right in time for the release of your new EP, self-titled EP, correct?
Yes. Yeah, it was perfect timing in a way because today's release day, so I'm feeling good.
Awesome, awesome. So you're based out of LA right now. How are things going in LA?
It's going well. I moved here like pretty much just after the pandemic started, so it was a little weird for the first year and a half, but definitely this year it's been great. I've been really enjoying it. I've been able to go to tons of shows, meet tons of other artists and musicians, and do my thing. And yeah, can't
Cool,
complain. The
cool,
weather's
cool.
great.
Yeah, for sure. And you moved to LA from New York. Is New York where you're originally from, or where you originally from?
So I'm originally from Perth, Western
Oh,
Australia. And I moved to New York to go to college in 2011. So I was there for 9 years total in New York.
nice. You're the elusive Perth musician that I've been looking for. I've interviewed many musicians from Australia, but none of them have ever
Oh,
been from Perth. I've never interviewed a musician from Perth.
wow, I'm honored to be the first.
It
That's
it,
amazing.
it was kind of a joke for the longest time about how, oh yeah, none of the musicians in Perth want to talk to me. So you know
I mean, we are very isolated over there, so sometimes it's hard to get us to, look outside the bubble.
That's fair. That's very true. So, excited to sit down and chat with you, talk about the new EP, all that fun stuff. It like having had an opportunity to listen through a lot of your music through the last week. I'm just really excited to sit down and chat and get to know more about you, who you are, and who some of your influences are, because you got some amazing music, and yeah,
Thank you so much.
for sure. So, kind of taking a step back from everything. What was like the introduction to music? Who brought music into your life?
Um, well, I would say probably my mum made me take piano lessons from age 4 to age 18. So that was really like the start of a lot of my relationship around music is like through playing it.
Hmm.
So yeah, I took piano lessons as a kid. But also while I was doing that, I was really into like music videos as a
Oh,
child. I
hmm.
would sit in like, I watched cartoons for like, I'm sure the first few years of my life, but around like age 7 is when like every Saturday and Sunday morning I would park myself in front of the TV and just like watch hours of music videos. There was a two channels back home, the ABC and which is the Australian Broadcast Network, and Channel 10, and they each had their own music video programs. So I'd start with Rage at 6 a.m. on at the ABC, and then I'd move on to Video Hits on Channel 10 later on. So I was always like, that was really a big part of like music or enjoying music as a kid was like through music videos.
Mm.
And then like starting to get given CDs for Christmas and birthdays. I had
Yeah.
my own little like CD player boombox thing, and I'd like obsessively go through the liner notes, and like I knew who Max Martin was like when I was like 9, because I would just read all the Britney Spears liner notes and be like, wow, this guy's mentioned a lot in this. So yeah, it was really, I think, a combination of like playing piano and doing choir and all that stuff, but then also just loving music videos. That was really kind of the start of it for me with music.
For sure, for sure. It's so was the like the music video channel, would that be equivalent to like MTV, I'm guessing?
Yeah, it just
Okay.
wasn't like its own channel. I think, I'm not sure if Australian cable got, yeah, we did have MTV at one point, and they
Hmm.
might still have it. But they had it on like public access
Okay.
TV.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
So back when like MTV was actually a music station and they
Yes.
played music videos. I gotcha.
Yes.
So we're already getting questions in the chat, and a lot of people want to know what the Ruby My Dear, what the name means or where it comes from.
So Ruby My Dear is the name of a jazz standard by the piano player Thelonious Monk. It's one of my favorite tunes. I went to jazz school both back in Australia and
Hmm.
in New York. I was a jazz singer for a long time and still kind of identify as that. So even though I don't really sing a lot of jazz anymore,
Hmm.
but I started writing songs when I was in jazz school. And then when I was looking for like a name, I didn't want to put my music under my own name. I always felt kind of weird about that. I wanted to kind of have it be separate. So I wanted something with the color red in it because my hair is red. And then I just made a big list of names with red related words in it. And that was one of them. And I mentioned it to my college best friend, was like, what do you think of this? And she was like, oh, yeah, I really like that. And I was like, that's it. And the reason it has a V in it is because of search engine purposes.
Ah,
Because if you type in the regular spelling, you're either going to get the Monk tune or you're going to get another guy from France who's a EDM producer. So,
oh, fair.
yeah.
And actually very fair and very, very smart. Like, I mean, for me, I didn't think, like, I kind of put the context clues together and two, and I was like, okay, it's Ruby, my dear, because that makes sense. But, I had seen, well, we were talking before we jumped on here about how I'd seen something similar with they put a V instead of an A, probably for similar
Yeah.
reasons about search engine
Yeah.
optimization and what have you. So,
Yeah, that band Paris does
hmm.
it. Pvris. And I always thought they were Purvis for the longest time. I had no idea it was supposed to be called Paris until
Yeah,
someone told me. I was like,
yeah.
oh.
It happens. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to get that question asked because I saw it pop up in the chat. Um, so going back to as a kid, you're going through like the school programs of music, listening or
Mhm.
watching the music videos on the TV. Where does kind of like writing your own music come into play, or is that kind of later in life?
I always kind of like played around and like pretended to write songs. As like a kid and in high school, like I
Mm,
didn't really, like I was a bass player in high school, and that was
mm,
like what I thought I was going to do with my life, was like be a bass player. I really clung to the idea of like being in someone else's band and like being the
mm,
side person. as much as I like loved the idea of kind of like having my own thing and like having an image and like my own
Yeah.
music and stuff, and obviously, you know, singing is one of my great passions. Like I love singing, but I just like I never really like took the idea of writing my own songs seriously in high school. I loved like songwriters and I loved bands. I was like a huge, just obsessed with like my favorite bands when I was in high school. And I would, like write down all their lyrics and memorize them and all that stuff. And I'm sure like that kind of thing really seeped its way into my brain because
Mm.
pretty much the only reason why I actually started writing songs properly, sorry, that's my doorbell, is
Uh,
because when I was at university at jazz school in Australia,
mhm.
we had to write original music. That was like part
Okay.
of our final assignment. Our final recital was you had to write 2 original tunes. And I was like,
Oh, well.
well, okay, I guess I am forced to do that. Like a lot of
Yeah.
things in my life, I don't really do them until someone makes me do it. So I do well with deadlines. So when I did that, like I got a lot of like really positive feedback and was
Hmm.
from those 2 songs. I was like, oh, okay, maybe I will try and keep
That's
going with this kind of
that's
thing.
fine. So go in university while you were writing this music. Were you influenced by anybody? Like any musicians? Were you listening to anybody? Where it's like, oh, okay, I kind of like how they're doing this or what they're saying.
Oh yeah. Um I was influenced by a lot of jazz firstly. 2 artists in particular, Gretchen Parlato and Esperanza Spalding.
Hmm.
I was really big fans of their singing and their composition techniques. I think the stuff I started writing originally was a lot more jazz leaning, so more like adventurous harmonies and song
Hmm.
structures, and big focus on like making room for improvising. But aside from them, I discovered Dirty Projectors when I was in college. Fiona Apple was a big one. Bjork, kind of like Radiohead. There's sort of like a canon of like pop/rock artists that like jazz
Hmm.
musicians are allowed to like, and I was all about them. So
That's funny.
yeah.
Uh, so you went to our university and you studied jazz, or was it a jazz school? More of
So
a
it was in Australia, it was an arts university that had a
okay,
jazz program. So I studied jazz singing there.
okay,
And then same thing, I went to the new school in New York. I
okay.
transferred there. Um
Gotcha. I
yeah.
was gonna. That was gonna be my next question. Is how did you go from Perth, Australia, to New York? And
Pretty much for college. I had
okay,
some family that had already moved to the US a couple of years before me. So that made it a lot easier for me to eventually move over when I was ready. But yeah, I moved to New York to go to school.
gotcha. Okay, that's and you ended up staying in New York for 8 years. And at this point, had you started releasing music, or was it not until you got to New York that you were?
Yeah, I didn't release any music until I was almost finished college. Yeah, so in New York, yeah, I waited
Hmm.
until then. Yeah, I kind of just had to, yeah, kind of figure it out. There were a bunch of us though in my year at school who were all trying to kind of do recording projects. We had like a
Hmm.
few of us made EPs around the same time, so we all recorded at the same studio and used a lot of the same players and stuff. So um yeah, I sort of was influenced by like the people around me really in terms of like their like what they were doing, like where they would record and how they were releasing things. So yeah, it wasn't until New York that I was really like, okay, I'm gonna do this. Like I'm really gonna push like writing my original music.
Hmm. Gotcha. And, for anybody that's watching live right now on Twitch, I threw uh, Ruby My Dear's song list in, or not song list, Spotify page. Yep, that's how life is right now. Spotify page up into the chat there. So if you want to go give any music a listen after the podcast, you have the link. Uh,
Yay!
uh, so you spent 8 years in New York. What was it about New York that just kind of kept you there? Because it feels like that would be like a really big transition from Perth. Like not only moving from Australia to America, but moving from Perth to New York, one of the biggest cities in the U.S.
Yeah,
Or
it's like the city of the world. Like that is
mm,
the city. Like when people say the city, they mean New York. So
mm-hmm,
it was, I mean, I was lucky that because I had family already in the US, like, granted, I'd only ever really been to LA before going to New York, but
mm-hmm,
I kind of got over that culture shock pretty quickly.
yeah,
And like, Australia is very similar to America in a lot of ways. Culturally, there are some pretty stark differences,
mm-hmm,
but I adapted pretty quickly and I was so ready to leave Perth. Oh my god, when I was done with college there, I was like, get me out of here. And
yeah,
unfortunately, I think that's the case for a lot of Perth, not only musicians but like actors and
mm-hmm,
artists. And it's so small. Like it's beautiful, and I'm so
yeah,
happy I grew up there. Like I love it to death, but it is very very difficult to you hit a ceiling pretty quickly. And I mean,
mm-hmm,
I was nowhere near like hitting that ceiling when I was there. I was so
mm,
young when I left, but I just I knew that I knew what I wanted to do and what I wanted to
mm,
pursue, and I knew I couldn't do it there.
yeah,
So I was really like, give me New York. I just want to eat it all up. Like
yeah,
I moved there so eager to just like devour all of it. But yeah, it takes a lot out of you. Like I was there for 9 years actually, and it it just yeah, I was ready to leave again.
yeah.
I hit my ceiling. I was like, I'm done.
I completely understand. Well, and we'd also briefly talked about this before we kicked the stream off about how isolated Perth is. I've said several times to musicians or that are from Australia or live in Australia, I never realized how big Australia was,
Mm,
and
it
even
is almost the same size as the US. It's huge.
and to go like because I've been systematically planning a trip to Australia for since 2020, and it was always like, well, I told you the joke about how all the Perth musicians don't want to talk to me. And it like whenever I tell musicians that, and they're like, "Well, when you come here, at least you don't have to travel to Perth at that point because that's going to throw a dent into your plans regardless because it's on the other side of the country." And I'm like, I guess that's fair. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, you don't have any obligations there. And it is, I mean, the problem is that it's about the same distance from New York to LA as it is Sydney to Perth, but there's nothing in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
There's very very little in
Mm-hmm.
between. So it's not like with the US where you can do like a big road trip or you can
Yeah.
make like multiple stops in between. Sort
Yeah.
of.
I will say though, I was watching a YouTube video where a YouTuber took a train ride from Perth to Sydney,
Mm.
and that looked like it was like because I've kind of decided like if I go to like international places, if I need to get around and make like long distance travel, I'll probably do it via train,
Yeah.
just so I can kind of see like plane would probably make the most sense, but like train just so I could see more of the country. So
Yeah, you'd be seeing a lot of the same thing if you did that Perth to Sydney
that's
trip by a train.
yeah, that's probably
I have actually done half of that when I was very little. My mum and my brother and I took the train from Perth to Adelaide, and my mum
oh
was like, "Never again. I'm never
never
doing
again.
that trip with two small children ever again."
Nice. What when I was in college, actually, I almost took or I was pushing really hard to get a summer job or an internship at a TV station in Australia.
Ooh.
but it would have been in Alice Springs.
Yes.
And,
Yes. The real
and
middle of nowhere.
yeah, and so it was just one of those things where it was like I was really pushing for it because everybody I had talked to that had done like a study abroad program or like traveled internationally, they're like, yes, it'll be the best, scariest, nerve wracking time of your life, but you're going to have a lot of fun and it'll be worth it. And I'm like, okay. And I found this internship for a TV station in Alice Springs. And I'm like, I don't know where Alice Springs is, but let's go. And so I started applying and I talked to the people and we were go it was I think it was going to actually go somewhere until I realized that there was a lot more to it than I was ready to kind of commit to. And
Mm.
now, like 2 years ago, when I started doing the podcast remote and was able to bring in musicians from Australia, I would tell them this story. They're like, "Yeah, you may have dodged a bullet there. Like you may have made the right choice." And I'm like, "What? Why do you say that?" Well, you know how they say like Australia's kind of dangerous because with the crocodiles and the big spiders and stuff.
Oh
That's
yeah.
kind of Alice Springs, and I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know.
I
And
mean, I've had people straight up tell me that they don't want to go to Australia because of the bugs and the animals. And
mm,
I'm like, well, I have friends in Australia who don't want to go to America because of the guns. So
yeah,
every place has its things.
I mean that stuff doesn't, but like, yeah, it's all perspective. So,
Yeah.
it, but anyways, so yeah, that's my Australia almost getting to live there for 6 months, but
I love that.
for
That's
yeah.
amazing.
Um, so anyways, so you're in LA now. You've been in America 10 years, roughly.
11 years.
11 years? Okay.
Hmm.
And you've been releasing music pretty consistently for a good amount of years. Um, what's kind of as far were you playing like shows and stuff before you came to America, or did everything just kind of start once you got to New York?
I was doing like little jazz gigs in
Mm-hmm.
Australia, but I wasn't really playing shows. This project didn't start until I was in New York, or like the first kind of like baby version of it. I
Gotcha.
started when I was still in college.
Okay.
And that's when I started really like playing shows and releasing music and kind of getting into like the Brooklyn DIY scene
Mm-hmm.
and that whole ecosystem. Yeah, so it was really coming to America that kind of opened that up for me.
Gotcha. And what was like the original thought going into this project of Ruby, my dear? Did you want it to be a jazz project or?
I That's a good question. I think I thought that it had to be a jazz
Hmm.
project just because I was at jazz school when I
Yeah.
started it. And it just over the years I mean it definitely started as like a jazz crossover kind of thing. But I was always really dissatisfied with that sound. Like I think I just deep down always wanted like the drums to hit really
Mm-hmm.
hard and the parts to, be actual parts and not like kind of improvised flourishes. And like I wanted to stick to the same arrangements and have, different like, synths and like more just I wanted to experiment more with production, and I couldn't really do that when, the parameters of jazz are kind of such that it's very like live instrument based. And obviously, that's not to say that people aren't doing super cool, like
Mm-hmm.
amazing stuff in that genre, but it was really, I just like, I felt like I was backing away from something by keeping it in a jazz
Mm-hmm.
context. And then I finally was like, I just got to do it. Like, if I want to have a band or like a rock
Mm-hmm.
band or a pop band or indie. I just got to like make it that. And it took a while to really like yank the sound out of that jazz world. And because I was still playing with the same band pretty much, like
Mm-hmm.
it was hard to kind of get them to follow me a little bit. And I didn't really know um how to operate from more of like a indie band
Mm-hmm.
uh, way versus like a jazz band way. So it was kind of trying to convince the people I was playing with, like, we should play the same part, like all like this,
Yeah.
and rather than like kind of jazzing it up, so to speak. So it was a real process, but honestly, I think with the once I started working with Andrew Lappin, my producer, that is
Hmm.
kind of where he really like whipped it into shape and was like, okay, this is what we're doing. This is what we're going to do. I really credit him a lot with pivoting the project in that way.
Gotcha. Awesome. And so, under Ruby My Dear, you've been releasing music since 2016, right? I think.
Yeah, under this spelling of the
Mm,
name, technically there's a couple of older EPs that
okay.
I are hidden away on the internet. But yeah.
So now you're gonna make people go search for that. I'm just kidding.
Well, not everything is on Spotify,
This is true.
but there are other music websites.
This is true. This is true. I've actually really enjoyed going through like SoundCloud and just
Mm.
find like musicians that or don't or can't or don't want to go on Spotify and just kind of listening to their music that they're just essentially giving away for free. It's
Yeah.
um it's really interesting and there's a lot of really good stuff on there. So I get what you're picking down or pick up what you're laying down.
Yes.
Um so today is launch day for you. It's got to
Hmm.
be pretty exciting. The self-titled EP "Ruby My Dear" by Ruby My I just love it. How long has this EP been in the works?
So I recorded it in summer 2020.
Okay.
So it's been over 2 years. I technically started writing the songs or some of them in 2019. Um, I did a residency in Canada at the Banff Center in like spring 2019, and that
Cool.
was where I wrote like two of them, Over It and Lullaby. And then Lose My Mind and yeah, Lose My Mind kind of started percolating end of 2019.
Mm,
And then April 2020 is when I really like, I had moved to LA, everything was shut down.
mm,
Andrew and my calendar were totally wiped. And he was like, do you want to like just start working on the next one? We had talked a little bit beforehand about doing stuff when I finally
mm,
moved out here. Because I should mention that he and I met in New York and then he moved to LA during the making of my first album, Waiting.
mm,
So I was like, okay, I guess we're gonna do it. And yeah, the Black Moon was kind of, had been sitting on that piano
mm.
idea for a while. So I kind
Yeah.
of like worked on that, pulled together some things to make Lose My Mind, and then Don't Ask Me, which is like the middle track. That was like a made it up in one night, kind of like one of those like lying in
Mm,
bed, like I'm hearing this thing. Oh yeah, I'm just gonna like play it, and it all
mm.
tumbled out. So yeah,
Nice.
it was sort of like a few months of kind of percolating stuff, and then once we were actually in production, it was like get it
Yeah.
all done.
Nice. And what I kind of like what you did as far as like building up to the album was you did the like the traditional three singles and then an album, but the fact that it's three singles and an EP, like the EP with the two two extra songs, I actually kind of think that works because you're building to an album and then you release it, but it's still like you're doing the singles, so it's kind of tricking the algorithm a little bit. I think, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's albums are a big undertaking.
Mm,
I think maybe I would have had the option to continue making more songs and making it an
mm-hmm,
album, but I don't know, it felt kind of like I don't know, we just like we made these 5 songs and they felt unique enough from each other, but
mm,
it wasn't like they weren't similar enough to really justify like making it a whole
mm,
album. It's sort of they felt like individual things,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is why I wanted to like do three videos and have
Mm-hmm.
three singles and kind of like have each song be its own little statement
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of put it all together as like a this is what's new, this is what's coming, this is the future of this
Yeah.
project. It's also why I self-titled it because I was like there's
Yeah.
not really like there are themes that
Mm-hmm.
connect all the songs, but I didn't want to do the whole like pandemic record. I like it I just like even though it is a pandemic record, obviously, it like I didn't want to draw attention to that with the titling. I
Mm.
wanted to draw more attention to the fact that like this is a new beginning for this project
Yeah.
because it's also the first record I've made like without a band. It was just me and Andrew
Oh,
doing
nice.
everything.
Yeah.
So it's really like a reset. So it
Uh,
was a kind
yeah.
of like market.
And this is kind of the statement piece for the project moving forward of this is what the sound is, this is what it's going to be moving forward.
Yeah.
Now, in previous releases, were you kind of toying with different sounds and genres, or was it always kind of this, and then this project just kind of solidified, like this is what it is?
I think I was it was again that same similar thing of like coming from a jazz background. I was like
Yeah.
slowly but surely with each project moving further and further away from that. I think the album that came out in 2019, that was
Mm-hmm.
a pretty big shift sonically into more of like a pop rock
Mm.
band sound kind of thing. There's one song on that called Draw that I think really foreshadows the vibe that we brought into the EP.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think every project has just been me trying to like excavate and like figure
Yeah.
out like what do I actually want to do and like it I feel like I'm never there. That's why I want to keep making records because I'm like I'm still figuring it out. I'm still trying to get it. I'm still
Yeah.
trying to like figure out the meaning of life through my
Yeah.
songs.
It's fair. That's very fair. Um, And then, so how did you kind of go through the process of selecting the three singles that will kind of define this project? So, Lose My Mind, Black, was it Lose My
Black
Mind,
Moon.
Black Moon, and Over It?
Yep.
Okay.
With those three, I just had like really strong visual ideas for each
Mm,
of them. I yeah, like I mean, it kind of ties back to what I was saying at the beginning about music videos. Like that's just a really big part of how I don't know, conceptualize music. It's often tied
mm,
to like a visual or a story or like
mm-hmm.
a mini movie within the song.
Yeah.
So I Black Moon, I knew I wanted something, you know, kind of indoors with those like particular set pieces. And then over it, I knew like that has to be in the desert, like abandoned shack. Like it's got to be that. And then Lose My Mind, like I was just dead set on having a walking video for that one. And we even
Yeah.
talked, like a lot of this actually came up when Andrew and I were working on the record. Like we would talk about, like, I think at one point he was like, when we were working on like production for Lose My Mind,
Mm,
he was like, "Yeah, this is a walking video. Like this is a walking song." Because
nice.
like I mean, I love those like videos for like Bittersweet Symphony by the
Mm,
Verve and Unfinished Sympathy by Massive Attack. Like I was like, I want to be part of that little canon of walking videos. Obviously, with that one, it turned into like we added the dance elements and all
mm,
that just because of a lot of that was to do with like logistical issues of trying to get
mm.
permits and stuff in
Yeah.
LA. And we did almost
Oh,
maybe get pulled
yes.
over by the cops on that shoot, but
Yeah,
okay.
maybe. Yeah, I often forget how strict LA is with their shooting permits.
Oh my
And
god, it is. Ugh.
that is often why I don't go to LA to do any film work because I know it's just going to be a big old thing. But my
Yeah.
buddy was telling me that there is kind of a, I don't know if it's a rule, law, or just kind of a unspoken agreement that as long as you don't set down a tripod, it's usually not that big of a deal.
That's good to know.
Us
Um,
Yeah. but
Yeah, we didn't have a tripod. The guy was just holding like a
mhm,
rig. A wonderful DP, Justin. He was like a
mm,
godsend during
mm,
that part of the shoot because it was at the end of the day, like at night, and
mhm,
we were like freaking out that we were going to get busted. And he
yeah,
was like, it. He would like laid out the ground rules. He was like, if the cops come, just pretend we're doing a student film and we didn't know the rules. And if anyone tries to take the camera, leave it to me. I'll decide whether to give it to them or
that,
beat them
yeah,
up.
yeah, that's fair. And yeah, LA is yeah, that's about it. It was kind of interesting when you were saying that you moved to LA like right as the pandemic was in full swing, and it seemed like everybody was trying to leave LA because that was like April, May, June, where it seemed like everybody was trying to leave LA because it was just going down pretty quick.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I was trying to get out of New York, so that was oh my god. Early pandemic in New
yeah.
York was terrifying.
Oh, I'm sure.
Um,
I know plenty of people that were in New York that just hopped the bridge and went over to Jersey or
oh
something,
yeah, yeah.
So,
I also know those people.
yeah. And it was just like, wow, that's rough. I was glad I was in Texas. It just
Mm,
it affected us, but it wasn't like, okay, everybody run for your lives.
yeah.
But it was interesting. So, now that you're at release day for Ruby My Dear, it's been almost 24 hours. I'm guessing it released at midnight.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So 9 p.m. Pacific time,
Okay.
midnight everywhere.
Okay, so it's been over 24 hours at this point. What's going through your mind right now as everybody's starting to sit down and really listen to everything and like the release is in full swing?
Um, I'm just happy people are listening to it. I actually haven't checked the numbers today
Mm,
except for at the start. But I've been getting everyone's DMs and shares and all that stuff, and it's been lovely. Like my favorite part is when people get the references, like
mm,
the influences without me having to tell them. Like that's something that's been really cool about the single rollout for this EP and then it coming out. Like someone today was like, "Oh, it sounds like Adore era Smashing Pumpkins," and I was like,
oh,
"Yes,
mm,
yes, that's it." Because a lot of those songs were on like the reference playlist that I
mm,
sent Andrew when we were working on the record. We always
mm,
like we kind of cobbled together a bunch of different
yeah,
sounds to just kind of
mm,
get a direction with
mm-hmm,
the stuff we work on, which is super helpful. Um, so yeah, just things like that, and like people have picked up on like the Madonna Ray of Light vibes and
mm,
like that kind of thing. But then there's other comparisons I get that I never would have thought of. So yeah, that's kind of my favorite part is just like talking about like because it's one thing for someone to say like, oh, I love it, it's great, or oh, this sucks, but like when people like dig a little deeper and are like, this is what this reminds me of, I'm like,
mm,
yes, give it to me because I just
yeah,
love talking about music. Like it's my most favorite thing in the universe. So
yeah, yeah, for sure.
yeah.
So, uh, as like now, I'm guessing things are going to. Are you now that the album or the EP's out? Are you going to just take a minute and just kind of let things percolate, or are you already looking at what's next?
Um, I've had what's next kind of like waiting in the wings for a while. Like
Mm-hmm.
I just have been, focused on producing the music videos and getting the rollout
Mm-hmm.
together for the EP. But I think next year I want to jump back in and record the next album because there's one song on the EP called Lullaby. It's the
Mm-hmm.
last track, and that is really like where I feel like I've like tapped in. I actually almost wasn't going to put it on the EP. I was going to
Mm-hmm.
save it for the next album because it is quite different
Mm-hmm.
from the rest. But I just love that sound that we created so much that
Yes.
I'm like, I want to do more of that. Like that's it. That's what I want to do. So I've got like a bunch of like voice memo demos. Like I have a
Mm-hmm.
folder now with like I know what I want to call the album.
Nice.
I've got all the, it's very, this is a lot more like thought out than
Mm,
anything I've done before. I feel like everything I've done up to this point has just been like a collection of
nice.
songs, even though
Yeah.
they do tie together in some
Mm,
ways. Um, but the next record, I'm very like, it's like there's a
yeah,
concept, there's an idea, there's a thread I want to follow.
that's fair.
So yeah, definitely looking ahead, but also yeah, just playing shows. I need to
Mm.
play some shows. So
Oh,
I'm
for sure.
gonna mostly focus on that in the immediate futures. We've got a
Gotcha.
show in LA in January that I'm prepping for now.
Nice. So you are going to take a little bit of a breather for the next few weeks, but you're going with the sight of the show in January and the upcoming recording sessions for the next project, whether it be EP, LP, you know,
It's gonna be an album. I'm gonna
it's
make
gonna
it be an album.
perfect. I love the commitment to that.
Yeah.
Uh, how long or how often are you playing shows right now? Is it like very sporadic or are you trying to do more shows or
It's been very sporadic over the
mm-hmm.
last 2, 3 years. Just, I mean, obviously because
Yeah,
of COVID.
yeah.
I have not really rushed back into playing live.
Mm-hmm.
I I've done like a few little like acoustic uh shows and like little duo sets with my guitarist, where I'll play piano and he'll play guitar. Um, and those have been really fun. It's funny because like I feel like uh, over the pandemic, I really tried to get better at
Mm-hmm.
just accompanying myself live. And like, I was always very scared of doing that before, but I feel a lot more confident doing that now. So I've been playing out, at least in LA, more of that setting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, now I'm really like full band is what I want to
Yeah.
spend most of next year doing, like booking those shows. And
Nice.
I don't know about like, I mean, touring is kind of everyone's a little, it just kind of seems like a mess right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as much as I would love to play other cities and all that, I'm nervous to get back into that. I did do some of it when the album came out in 2019. We did the Northeast and the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so fun, but it's a lot of investment, and I'm at the point where I would just rather invest that money
Into
into like the next record. Yeah,
yeah,
because I know
I
what I want
got
to
you.
do with the record, and yeah,
Because like you said, it's a huge financial commitment to go tour. So
hmm
unless you know you're at least not gonna lose money, it's really hard to commit to go like say, hey, I'm gonna go do 10 days.
yeah.
You know.
And even the big artists are losing money. Like
Mm,
everyone's canceling their tours right now.
mm-hmm.
It's very sad. I hope it changes because I think, yeah, I think people want
Yeah,
to go see shows, but it's
yeah,
just the
and
costs are astronomical.
yeah, and I think for independent musicians, I think I'm gonna make a bold prediction. Next year, you're not gonna see like traditional tours. You're gonna see like weekend runs. So it'll be like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they'll either drive to a place or they'll just fly to a place and then just like three dates within X amount of hours. So in that way it's not as financially hardcore, so you don't have to have as much upfront cash. But
Yeah.
then again, when you bring in like a full band, that's a whole thing in and of itself because it's like you got to get their schedules right. You got to make sure
Mm-hmm.
they're happy. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got really burnt out on all of that in 2019. I was actually already planning on taking a break from playing shows before the
and
pandemic hit. I was like, I'm done. I need a break. And then everyone took a break. So
yeah, yeah, gotcha.
felt less
Uh,
guilty.
so you've been in LA now since I guess it will be 3 or 2.5 years. Yep, that's
Yep.
about
Almost
two,
3 years.
almost
Ugh.
3 years. How's do you see LA as kind of the place for you, or where are you kind of at in that or thought process?
I think it's definitely where I want to be and where I need to be for what I want to do. For a long time while I was living in New York, I've wanted to go to London. Like I
Mm,
just felt like that's where my music would do well and all that. But I feel like there's been this gradual mass exodus from of New York people or the New York music community in a lot of ways
mm-hmm,
to LA. Like
mm-hmm.
everyone has slowly been trickling over, and then in 2020 like a bunch of us came over
Yeah.
here. So I feel I feel a little more rooted in LA,
Mm-hmm.
not just because I have family here, but also because a lot of the people that I were part of my community back in New York are now here. So it's,
Mm.
and I just, yeah, it reminds me a lot of home, like with the weather and, the beach and the sunshine and the mountains and the everything. And, the traffic is
Yeah.
horrible, but
Mm.
I feel like I feel a little more rooted in LA than
Mm.
I do elsewhere.
Yeah. You brought up London, and the one thing that I've noticed, I'm seeing a lot of like from the US, like if, from artists moving from the US to the UK, we'll just say the
Mm,
UK in general, it
yeah.
seems to be more country musicians
Mm,
and like R&B hip hop musicians are moving over to LA or London.
that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's like I mean, there's really starting to find their own like country sound, like the R&B and hip hop. That one was kind of an interesting thing that I just kind of stumbled upon because I was like starting to put two and two together on that one. But the country one makes a lot of sense because country music is pretty huge over there. Like there's
Mm.
they're really starting to find like what would be a they're really finding their identity as UK country.
That's so
So,
interesting. I feel like another place that has like a huge country and Americana scene that I had no idea about until I went to Canada
mm,
was it's Canada. Like
mm-hmm,
I was just like, what? Where is this
yeah,
coming from?
yeah,
But
it
it's great.
yeah, it's one of those things. It's interesting, and yeah, I mean, I guess all of Europe just has like a really big Americana folk like thing that they're into, which I guess that kind of makes sense. But you know,
Mm.
it is what it is. So, kind of putting music aside for the moment, now that the EP's out and the year's coming to an end, everything's hopefully going to be chilled out for the next 6 weeks, and we can kind of get through the
Mm.
rest of the year. I feel like I'm making a bold statement right now, but hopefully the rest of the year is just kind of very chill. Um, what do you do outside of music when you need to kind of escape from everything? What are some of your hobbies?
Well, the thing about that is that music is my hobby and it's also my entire career. So
Yeah.
it's I yeah, yeah, I'm one of those people where I'm sort of like, do I have hobbies? But I do. I love going to the movies. I'm
Mm,
a big movie buff. I love just, sitting in a theater by myself and watching movies. So
nice.
I do that. That's when I really need some like me time. I'll
Hmm.
go do that. Um yeah, that's really the biggest one. I mean, um
Have you seen any good movies lately?
yes, I saw Pearl. It was a
Okay.
horror movie. It was the sequel to that movie X that came out at the
Okay.
beginning of the year. It's like a prequel. No, it's not a sequel, it's a prequel.
Okay.
I loved that. Oh, it was um yeah, beautifully shot and really funny. Like I didn't think
Mm,
it would be funny. And the lead actress Mia Goth is amazing.
nice.
The music, the score was gorgeous. It was very kind of modeled after one of those like old like 1950s Technicolor kind of movie
Hmm.
scores. So yeah, loved it.
Nice. Awesome. And so when you go see movies, you're still going to the theater, or will you sit down to like Netflix and stuff like that?
I try to go to the theater.
Mm,
You do run the risk of sitting next to annoying people
yeah.
sometimes, but that's okay. I just love it. I just love being like sucked in to that. And I struggle a lot with looking at my phone like all
Mm,
the time. Um And I often, if I'm watching something at home, I'll like look at my phone and then I'll keep looking at my phone and then I'll look up and I'll be like, what happened?
Yeah,
So going to the theater forces me to put it away.
that's fair. That's very fair. So, one thing that we do on the podcast with everybody that comes on is we play a fun little game. It is called Rapid Fire Randomness. It's not so rapid, but it's definitely very random.
Okay.
I have a random question generator sitting right in front of me, and I'm going to just fire off 10 questions, and yeah, we'll just kind of see what happens.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'll do, let me have a sip. A sip of my seltzer. Okay. All right.
All right, here we go. Rapid fire randomness. What is an interesting fact about where you grew up?
Um, there's an island off the coast of Perth called Rottnest, which is Dutch for rat's nest. And it's
Oh,
because of the quokkas, these little mammals that are everywhere.
hmm,
I guess the Dutch settlers thought they were, or
rats.
Dutch colonizers thought they were rats. So,
Oh, wow.
yep.
Interesting. Interesting. Other than your actual name, what is a nickname that your friends used to call you? Like a alternative name, or I don't know what you'd call it in Australia.
Uh, I would get either Gabs or Stella, and I
Okay.
don't know where the Stella came from. That was something that my one of my friends in high school started calling me that, and then it was just there.
Hmm. I used to call my friend Pampers, which was a diaper brand,
Isn't it? Yeah, I was
and
about to say that's a diaper
yeah,
brand.
because when he used to get very inebriated, he'd go to the bathroom in his pants, and so I used to make the joke that
Oh
he
god.
needed Pampers,
Yeah.
except nobody understood it. So I was just that weird one that gave him a nickname that nobody understood. So yeah,
Oh
it
my
is.
god.
Actually, this one is kind of right up your alley. What movie plot twist surprised you the most?
Oh, uh, uh, oh, Shutter Island. That
Mm,
one like really surprised me when I saw it. I was like, oh, okay.
yeah,
That one and the others.
okay,
Yeah. Though
yeah,
anything where it's like those two are kind of similar.
mm-hmm,
That it,
yeah.
yeah.
I
I don't want to
got you.
spoil.
Yeah, for sure. That is one of those weird things where it's like, yeah, those movies have been out for a minute, but you still don't want to spoil it if somebody hasn't seen it. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Who's your secret celebrity crush?
Oh, I got lots of them. Um, Probably Andrew Garfield. I don't really talk about him that much, but it's not a
Hmm.
secret. He's
Oh,
great. He's like so talented and just like good at acting and yeah. That and the lead singer from Turnstile.
okay, fair. Um, what is something that instantly makes you happy?
Um, Having a good chat with my friends over like a wine and some fries. That's my happy spot.
What is a movie quote that you reference way too often?
um, Probably like do or do not. There is no try.
For that question, usually we get a lot of Step Brothers, but yes, that
Uh,
yeah. Um, how many times have you made or yeah, how many times have you made a public spectacle of yourself or embarrassed yourself in public?
ooh, probably lots of times. My embarrassments are usually not like too public. They're just like, around friends, luckily, at
Mm-hmm.
parties and usually involve too much alcohol. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Gotcha. You're given a plane ticket to anywhere. Where are you going?
I would go back home to Perth because I haven't been in 4 years, 4 or 5 years.
I thought you were about to say 11 years. I was like, wait, what?
No, no, but I
Hmm.
have only been back twice in
Okay.
11 years, so definitely want to go back.
Uh, what's easier, stopping a bad habit or starting a good habit?
Starting a bad habit. What's starting a good habit? I think. Oh, that's a good one. Stopping a bad habit, I
Hmm.
guess. But
Fair.
it's also
That's
hard to start them. Like it's hard to be consistent.
yeah, that's true. If cars were free, how many would you have?
Just one.
Just fair. If you had unlimited funds to create a documentary, what would the documentary be about?
Ooh. Um, I would want to make it on ooh, maybe like UK music in the 90s. I know there's been a few of them, but I don't think there's been like a really like impactful, really well done documentary about like the Bristol scene in the
Hmm.
90s. That's like my favorite era of music. So
Hmm.
oh, I would want a good one on that.
Sure. What is the most dangerous thing you've ever done?
Um uh Release very personal and sad songs. Actually, probably honestly putting out this EP, it's a lot of it is about a very specific relationship, and I have worried that that person is one day gonna reach out and be like, "What the hell?"
We got two more songs.
Hmm.
If politics were sports, was or if politics was a sport, what sport would it be?
Um. Oh God. Probably like a really dirty, ugly boxing match with um yeah, gloves off.
Fair. What are three things, or no, what three things do you always make sure you bring on a camping trip?
Um, I'm not a big camper, I will say
Mm,
that, but if I'm going somewhere remote, I bring phone charger. Actually, no, yeah, I've camped at music festivals a few
mm,
times, and yeah, phone charger, warm clothes because it always gets colder at night than you think it's going to,
yep.
and um, uh, someone I like hanging out with.
Nice. I will say though, camping at music fests are the best. Like that's the best way to go camping.
It's yeah, you get no sleep, but
Yeah.
it's great because you can hear like if they the artist. I've been to Bonnaroo twice.
Mm,
That's the one that I've camped at, and yeah, the music doesn't stop until like 3 or 4 a.m.
mm-hmm,
and then people start sound checking at like 7 a.m. So
mm-hmm.
it's yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. Yeah, no sleep, but it's great.
The first music fest I ever went to was this hippie style music festival in the northern New Mexico, and it was
Mm.
just one of those like free love vegan, just everybody like it was supposed. They were trying to make it very Woodstock ish, um, and we went in as media. My buddy and I, we went as media as live and amplified, and they're like, "Oh
Mm.
yeah, you can camp," or like, "Here's a camping pass or whatever." It's down the hill, and it was just in this big open field, and I didn't end up actually staying in the tent because this was in like September in northern New Mexico, and it got down into like the 20s at night, and I was
Oof.
like, "Yeah, I'm good on that one." So,
Yeah. Hmm.
but just like you said for Bonnaroo, it music went till 3 or 4 in the morning, and then people started doing mushrooms and LSD like after that, and then music would kick up again at 10, and it was just like,
Oh my God.
I think I'm good. I'm good, guys. Like so, yeah.
People go hard.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. So I do want to thank you for joining us on the podcast. It's been an absolute blast. If anybody wants to check out your music or any of that stuff, where's the best place to find it?
You can find me on Spotify and Apple Music, all the streaming platforms. I have a YouTube channel which has all my music videos. All of that is under Ruby My Dear with a V, not a U. And the social platform I'm active on the most is Instagram, so you can follow me there. I post on that like every day,
Nice.
like music stuff and other life stuff.
Mm,
So I'm also on Twitter. Who knows how much longer that's going to be around for, but I'm going to be there till the end. And yeah, TikTok kind of, sort of, not really, but I don't know. Maybe if more people follow me there, then I'll use it more. But
for sure.
yeah.
For sure. Well, once again, thank you so much for joining us. I absolutely appreciate it. It's been an absolute blast. Um, Before we wrap it up, though, what's one piece of advice you have for the young musicians out there?
Um, Practice your instrument
Mm-hmm.
and uh, don't close the door on any opportunity, even if it is not exactly what you thought you wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
If it interests you, explore it. A lot of the stuff I'm doing now, never would have thought that I would be doing like 10 years ago. So I think it's good to stay open to different projects, different opportunities. And yeah,
Awesome. Awesome. Well, once again, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute blast.
thank you
Uh,
so much.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We got a little bit of a break on the podcast because I need to take a break after yesterday. But we'll be back starting December 1st with the 25 Days of Christmas podcast. Something I'm going to call it nice. It'll be predominantly all musicians releasing Christmas music. I'm really excited about it. And we will see you in about a week. Cool. Yeah. All right. Yep. Sorry.